The rain-slicked streets of Los Angeles gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights, the kind of night where the city's underbelly felt alive, pulsing with secrets. In the heart of Koreatown, where neon signs flickered in Hangul and English, Jeon Kim hurried through the crowded market, her coat pulled tight against the chill. She was just a curator at a small antique shop, scraping by on commissions from faded jade carvings and porcelain relics. But tonight, the weight around her neck wasn't just fatigue. It was the necklace, tucked beneath her collar, a delicate gold chain with a jade pendant shaped like a blooming lotus. She'd found it months ago, hidden in the lining of an old trunk donated to the shop. No provenance, no questions asked. Or so she'd thought. Ji-yoon had tried to ignore it at first, the way the jade warmed against her skin like a secret heartbeat. But whispers from the shop's elderly patrons had stirred her curiosity. Tales of old Korean syndicates, forbidden loves tangled in the shadows of post-war smuggling rings. She'd meant to sell it, to let it vanish into some collector's vault. Instead, she'd kept it. A foolish talisman against her own loneliness. Now, with rumors of triad encroachments from rival factions bleeding into Koreatown's docks, she felt eyes on her everywhere. Paranoia, she told herself, clutching her bag as she ducked into a dimly lit alley, shortcut toward her apartment. The air smelled of sizzling street food and exhaust, the distant hum of traffic from Olympic Boulevard underscoring the market's chatter. Ji-yoon's footsteps echoed off graffiti-tagged walls, her breath visible in the cool mist. She didn't hear the soft scuff behind her until it was too late. A shadow detached from the doorway, gloved hand clamping over her mouth. Panic surged as she was yanked into a side recess, the world narrowing to the metallic tang of fear and the press of a body against hers. Quiet. A voice hissed in Korean, low and accented with the clipped efficiency of someone who'd learned threats in boardrooms as much as back alleys. The necklace, hand it over. She struggled, elbow jabbing backward, but he was stronger, his grip like iron forged in hidden forges. The pendant slipped free in the scuffle, catching the faint light from a flickering bulb overhead. Ji-yoon's mind raced. How did they know? The shop's ledger? A loose-lipped donor? Her attacker's eyes widened for a split second, not with greed, but recognition. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, voice dropping to a whisper, as if the jade itself might betray them. Before she could answer, headlights pierced the alley, tires crunching on wet gravel. The man released her abruptly, shoving her toward the shadows as a black SUV screeched to a halt. Doors flew open, and two figures emerged, suited, earpieces glinting, moving with the precision of private security. Gunshots cracked the night, muffled pops that sent Ji-yoon sprawling behind a dumpster, heart pounding against the necklace's chain. The attacker fired back, a brief exchange that ended with him slumping against the wall, blood pooling dark on the pavement. One of the rescuers approached her cautiously, hands raised. "Miss Kim, you're safe now. Come with us." She scrambled to her feet, the alley reeking of cordite and rain-soaked asphalt. The man who spoke was broad-shouldered, his face impassive under a close-cropped haircut, exuding the quiet authority of someone who'd patrolled these streets for years. "Who are you?" Ji-yoon gasped, backing away. But the second figure, a woman with sharp eyes and a holstered pistol, flanked her gently. "People who know what that necklace means. Mr. Han sent us." Han, the name sent a chill deeper than the rain. Kang Min-ho, the reclusive magnate who controlled half the import-export lanes along the port of Los Angeles. Whispers painted him as the iron fist of the Korean syndicate. Untouchable, his operations a web of legitimate shipping fronts, masking everything from black market artifacts to whispered enforcements. Why would he care about a pawnshop trinket? Ji-yoon's fingers brushed the jade, its edges smooth from years of hidden wear. The SUV idled, engine purring like a predator, doors open invitingly. "Refuse," and she'd be alone in the night. Fair game for whoever else hunted this relic. Accept, and she'd step into a world where curiosities like hers could unravel empires. They drove in tense silence, the city blurring past rain-streaked windows. Ji-un sat in the back, wedged between her escorts, the leather seats cool and scented with polish. The woman, Su-jin, she introduced herself, offered a thermos of hot tea, her movements efficient, betraying no emotion. "Mr. Han doesn't intervene lightly," Su-jin said, eyes on the side mirror scanning for tails. "That pendant, it's tied to his past. A woman he lost years ago, during a turf war with the Vietnamese crews. She wore it always, thought it was gone forever." Ji-un's stomach twisted. Forbidden lover. The stories flooded back. Min-ho's rise from dockside runner to syndicate kingpin, marked by a scandalous affair that nearly toppled his alliances. The necklace, if authentic, wasn't just jade. It was a key to old grudges, perhaps even a ledger of debts unpaid. "I didn't steal it," she protested, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It came in with estate junk. I was going to authenticate it." The man in the passenger seat, Jay, gruff and scarred, glanced back. "Doesn't matter now. Rivals have been sniffing around Koreatown's antique trade. That hit in the alley? Not random. They traced it to your shop's manifests. Leaky supplier. Probably bought off." The SUV veered off the boulevard, descending into the labyrinth of industrial tunnels beneath the warehouse district. Echoes of dripping water and distant generators filled the air, the sodium lights casting elongated shadows on concrete walls etched with faded gang tags. Ji-un's pulse quickened. These passages were syndicate lifelines, shortcuts for shipments that never saw daylight. As they emerged into a fortified garage, floodlights bathed the space in harsh white, revealing armed guards at every post. A private elevator waited, its doors seamless steel. Su-jin escorted her inside, the ascent smooth and silent. "He'll explain," she said, as the doors opened to a penthouse overlooking the glittering sprawl of the city. The air here was warmer, scented with sandalwood and faint cigar smoke, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the storm-lashed skyline. Min-ho stood by the bar, silhouetted against the view, his tailored suit impeccable, a glass of soju in hand. He turned, dark eyes locking on the necklace still clutched in her fist. Recognition flickered there, raw and unguarded for a heartbeat. "Miss Kim," he said, a voice like polished gravel extending a hand. "You've kept something of mine safe. Now tell me, how did it find its way to you?" Ji-un hesitated, the weight of his gaze pulling her forward. But as she stepped closer, a faint buzz from the guards' radios caught her ear. Static, then a clipped warning about a perimeter breach. Who had followed them through the tunnels? And what old ghost did this jade summon from the depths? Ji-un's fingers tightened around the jade pendant, its cool surface a stark contrast to the heat rising in her cheeks under Min-ho's scrutiny. The penthouse felt like a suspended world, the storm outside battering the windows with relentless sheets of rain, thunder rumbling like distant artillery. Sandalwood incense curled from a low burner on the bar, mingling with the sharp bite of soju on his breath as he stepped closer. His presence filled the space, tall, unyielding, with the faint scar tracing his jawline, a remnant of the wars that had built his empire. "I found it in an old trunk," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "Donated anonymously to the shop. No tags, no history. I kept it because it felt important, like it had a story." She met his eyes, dark pools reflecting the city's fractured lights, searching for deceit but finding only a guarded intensity. Min-ho nodded slowly, gesturing to a leather armchair by the window. "Sit, please." He poured her a measure of soju, the liquid glinting amber in the low light, and handed it over with a deference that surprised her. As she sank into the seat, the city's sprawl unfolded below. Cargo ships dotting the harbor like silent sentinels, their cranes swaying in the wind. "That necklace belonged to Su'ah," he said, settling across from her, elbows on his knees. "My everything once. She was the daughter of a rival importer. Back when the syndicates carved up the ports after the 90s influx, we kept it secret. Her family would have killed us both. But she wore this always. A gift from her mother, said it brought luck in storms." Ji-un sipped the soju, the burn grounding her amid the revelations. Luck in storms, ironic given the tempest raging now. Why hide it if it's just a family heirloom? His laugh was low, bitter, like gravel under tires. "Because Su'ah vanished during a raid on our safe house in San Pedro. Vietnamese crews, pushing in from the south. They torched the place, took what they could. I thought the necklace burned with her. But if it's surfacing now—" He trailed off, glancing toward the elevator doors as the radio buzz crackled again. Su Jin's voice, clipped and urgent. "Perimeter secure, but we've got a ghost signal on the east tunnel cams. Possible tail from the market." Minho's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise. Instead, he leaned forward, voice dropping. "Someone's been watching you, Miss Kim. Your shop's manifests. Those aren't public. A supplier leaked it, or worse, one of my own men. The necklace isn't just sentimental. It's a marker. Su'ah used it to hide codes. Micro-etchings on the back, coordinates for old drop points. Rivals find it. They unravel shipments we've buried for years. Debts, routes, names." Ji-un flipped the pendant over, squinting in the lamplight. Faint lines etched into the gold, invisible unless you knew to look, numbers, perhaps latitudes, blurred by time and wear. Her curator's eye caught the precision. Not random scratches, but deliberate. This could be anything, shipping logs from the war era. "Or a ledger of betrayals," Minho replied, his gaze lingering on her face, not the jade. There was a pull there, unspoken, a curiosity mirroring her own, laced with the danger of his world. Su'ah was clever. She trusted no one fully, not even me. If it's real, it means someone's been digging up the past to bury me now. The elevator dinged softly, and Su Jin entered, her face a mask of controlled tension. She carried a tablet, its screen glowing with grainy footage. The alley attack replayed in fragments, timestamped just hours ago. "We pulled this from a backup cam in the tunnel network," she said, setting it on the coffee table. "Your attacker, face, matches a low-level enforcer for the Lee faction. Vietnamese ties, but they've been cozying up to triad runners out of Long Beach. And look here." She zoomed in on a paused frame. A second figure in the shadows, partially obscured, but the glint of a tattoo on his wrist, dragons coiling around a lotus, eerily similar to the pendant's design. Minho's expression darkened, a storm of his own brewing. "Internal," he muttered, "someone from the old guard, feeding them intel." He stood, pacing to the window, the rain's patter underscoring the silence. Ji-un watched him, the weight of autonomy clashing with the safety his world promised. No more alleys, no more solitary nights, but loyalty to his code, that iron restraint against innocence, pulled at her. Was she stepping into protection or a cage? "I can't stay here," she said, abruptly rising. "This isn't my fight. I authenticate relics, not syndicates." He turned, eyes softening just a fraction. "You think you can walk away? They've seen you with it. But stay, and I'll show you how deep this goes." Dinner, tomorrow. Neutral ground, a restaurant in Little Tokyo. No guards inside, just truth. It was an invitation laced with command, his voice weaving gratitude and necessity. Financial need tugged at her, shop debts mounting, the necklace's value a potential windfall, but curiosity burned brighter, the mystery of Su'ah's ghost binding them. Su Jin cleared her throat, "Sir, the breach, it's a decoy. We've got movement at the docks. Manifests tampered. A container's gone missing from tonight's run." Minho nodded to her, then back to Ji-yun. "Decide by morning. But know this, the necklace chose you for a reason." He escorted her to a guest room down the hall, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed her racing thoughts. As she lay on the silk sheets, the jade warm against her skin, distant sirens wailed through the storm. Who had etched those codes, and what betrayal waited in the missing container's shadow? Ji-yun woke to the muted grey of dawn, filtering through heavy curtains. The storm's fury reduced to a steady drizzle, tapping against the penthouse windows. The guest room was a study in understated luxury, teak furniture polished to a sheen, a vase of white orchids scenting the air with faint sweetness, and the distant hum of the city awakening below. But sleep had been fitful, haunted by the jade's weight on her chest and the etched codes that now seemed to pulse like a hidden vein. She dressed quickly in the clothes Soo-jin had left, simple black slacks and a silk blouse, far from her usual thrift store finds, and slipped the necklace back under her collar. Walking away wasn't an option. The shop's locks wouldn't hold against determined hunters, and curiosity had rooted itself deeper than fear. Downstairs, the penthouse kitchen buzzed with quiet efficiency. Jay stood at the counter, brewing coffee that filled the space with rich, bitter aroma, his scarred hands steady on the pot. He nodded as she entered, no words needed. Minho was already at a low table by the windows, reviewing a stack of printed manifests under the soft glow of a desk lamp. The harbour sprawled visible now in daylight, cranes groaning as they loaded containers onto ships, a ballet of legitimate commerce masking the shadows beneath. "You stayed," he said without looking up, his voice carrying that gravel edge tempered by relief. "I need answers," Ji-yun replied, accepting the coffee from Jay. It scalded her tongue, grounding her. "About the codes, and why your own people might be leaking to rivals." She sat across from him, the table's glass surface cool under her elbows, reflecting fragments of the skyline. Minho set the papers aside, one sheet catching her eye. A shipping ledger with highlighted entries, dates from the late 90s aligning with Sua's era. The etchings aren't random. Sua was meticulous. She hid drop coordinates for emergency caches, cash, documents, even burner phones stashed in port lockers. We used them during the turf wars when banks couldn't be trusted. If the Lees have them, they can hit our routes, expose old alliances. He tapped a circled line, a container number from last night's missing shipment. "This one's off. Manifest says electronics from Busan, but the weight's wrong. Too light for tech, too heavy for air cargo fraud." Ji-yun leaned in, her curator's instincts kicking in. The numbers on the page mirrored the jade's faint lines when aligned just so. Latitudes for San Pedro docks, longitudes pointing to a warehouse cluster in Long Beach. "It's a map," she murmured, tracing the pattern with her finger. "Not just history, it's active. Someone's using it now." His eyes met hers, a spark of shared revelation cutting through the tension. "Exactly. And they knew you had the key. Your shop's donor. Anonymous, you said. Matches a pattern. We've had plants in the antique circuit feeding fakes to flush out relics like this." He stood, signaling Jay with a subtle nod. "We'll verify it today, but first breakfast, then the restaurant." The drive to Little Tokyo was a descent into the city's layered pulse. Soo-jin took the wheel of a nondescript sedan, tinted windows shielding them from prying eyes, while Jay followed in a trailing SUV. Rain-slicked streets reflected cherry blossom petals caught in gutters, the air thick with the scent of wet concrete and distant ocean salt. Ji-yun sat beside Minho in the back, the leather seats creaking softly as they navigated traffic. No overt security inside the car, just the faint crackle of earpieces linking to a convoy network. "Why neutral ground?" she asked, glancing at him. His profile was sharp against the passing facades, pagoda roofs on low buildings. Steam rising from ramen shops, because trust starts small, he said, his hand brushing hers accidentally as he adjusted the vents, sending a jolt through her. No walls, no guards, just us. And the truth about Suar. He paused, the city's hum underscoring his words. She taught me restraint, never hit innocence, never let ambition blind you to loss. I broke that once after she vanished, vowed never again. The restaurant was a quiet haven tucked behind sliding shoji screens, its interior dim with lantern light and the subtle clink of porcelain. They were seated in a private alcove, tatami mats soft underfoot, the air scented with miso and grilled eel. Minho ordered simply, sashimi, rice, green tea steaming in clay pots, but his eyes scanned the room, noting the waiter's subtle limp, the way a patron's phone buzzed too frequently under the table. Ji-yun felt the pull of autonomy warring with the safety here. His world offered shields, but at what price to her independence? As they ate, he slid a small ledger across the table, its leather cover worn. From the penthouse safe, Suar's handwriting, partial decodes from the necklace. Matches the missing container. It's a decoy, loaded with artifacts to draw heat, while the real shipment reroutes through tunnels. He pointed to a scrawled note. Beware the dragon's coil, internal rot. The tattoo from the footage. One of my lieutenants, Park, vanished last week. Thought it was desertion. Now. A shadow fell across the alcove. Su-jin slipping in from the side entrance, her face taut. Sir, we've got a tale. 2 cars, unmarked, pacing us since the tunnels, and the shop, cops on site saying anonymous tip about stolen goods. Her voice was low, urgent, the restaurant's murmur fading to a tense hush. Minho's fork paused mid-air, possessiveness flashing in his eyes, not just for the necklace but for the fragile thread between them. Ji-un's heart raced. The ethics of her quiet life clashed against the loyalty he evoked, a code that spared the innocent even as it ensnared her. We move now, he said, signaling the exit. Outside, the drizzle had thickened, sodium lights blurring on wet asphalt as they hurried to the sedan. Tires hissed on pavement, the trailing vehicles closing in the rear view. But as they merged onto the boulevard, a sudden blackout plunged the block into darkness, streetlights winking out, engines stuttering in the convoy, horns blared, chaos erupting like a staged diversion. Was it a power surge from the storm, or a deliberate cut to the grid, buying time for infiltrators? And in the shadows, who held the full ledger ready to strike at the heart of Minho's guarded empire? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The blackout swallowed little Tokyo in an instant, the boulevard transforming from a vein of neon and traffic into a void pierced only by the erratic flash of headlights and the glow of distant high-rises. Ji-yun's pulse thundered in her ears. The sedan's engine coughing back to life as Su-jin floored the accelerator, tires screeching against rain-slicked asphalt. The air inside the car thickened with the scent of wet leather and adrenaline, Minho's hand instinctively reaching across the seat to steady her as the vehicle lurched forward. Horns wailed in the darkness, a cacophony of confusion that masked the low growl of pursuing engines behind them. Grid sabotage, Minho said, voice calm but edged with steel, pulling his phone from his jacket. The screen's blue light illuminated his face, casting sharp shadows as he tapped out a message. Not the storm, too precise. Someone cut the substation feeds. He glanced at Su-jin in the rear view. Jay's convoy. Responding but jammed signals, she replied, weaving through stalled cars, her knuckles white on the wheel. The radio crackled faintly, fragmented bursts from the guards. Eastbound, visual on 2 tails, unmarked sedans, plate spoofed. Ji-yun clutched the necklace, the jade's warmth a small anchor amid the chaos. The blackout wasn't random. It screamed of inside knowledge, guard rotations bypassed, access codes fed to rivals. Her mind raced back to the restaurant ledger, Suar's warning about the dragon's coil. Internal rot indeed. They burst through the blackout's edge onto a brighter stretch of road, the pursuing cars materializing in the mirrors like specters, sleek, black, no plates visible under the sodium haze. One surged closer, its high beams blinding, while the other hung back, a watcher coordinating via encrypted line. Minho leaned forward. Double back to the warehouse district. Use the service roads. Avoid the main cams. His tone brooked no argument, a leader's command honed by years of evading federal stings and rival ambushes. Ji-un felt the push-pull acutely, his protectiveness a shield. Yet it eroded her sense of self, drawing her deeper into a web she hadn't spun. Sujin nodded, yanking the wheel into a sharp turn that slung them onto a narrower artery lined with shuttered loading docks and chain-link fences rattling in the wind. The drizzle had evolved into a steady downpour, blurring the windshield wiper's rhythm, the air heavy with the briny tang of the nearby harbour. Ji-un's stomach knotted. These side streets were syndicate veins, patrolled but vulnerable to turncoats. "The shop tipped to the cops," she said, breaking the tension. "That was them, wasn't it? Flushing me out while they closed the net." Minho's eyes met hers briefly, a flicker of regret softening the intensity. "Likely. Your donor wasn't anonymous, traced to a ghost account linked to Park's old contacts. He was Sua's cousin, distant but loyal once, if he's flipped." He trailed off, the implication hanging like exhaust fumes. Loyalty versus fear. The syndicate's code demanded the former, but ambition cracked it wide. Ji-un thought of her own life, the quiet autonomy of cataloguing relics. Free from such shadows. Yet here she was, bound by a jade ghost, her ethics bending under the weight of Minho's restrained power. He never harmed innocence, he'd vowed. Was she one or collateral in his redemption? The lead pursuer rammed them from behind, a jolt that sent Ji-un's head snapping forward, the seatbelt biting into her shoulder. Metal groaned, but Sujin held the line, accelerating into a hairpin curve that shaved seconds off the chase. "Incoming call, burner," Sujin announced, patching it through the speakers. A distorted voice rasped in Korean, laced with static. "Hand over the key, Han. The codes are ours now. Walk away or the curator bleeds." Minho's face hardened, but he didn't rise to the bait. "Trace it," he murmured to Sujin. Then spoke into the open line. "You know the code. Innocents stay out. Release her and we talk terms." Short, high-tension words revealing nothing but buying time. The voice laughed, a hollow echo cut by the call's abrupt end. Ji-un shivered. They knew her role, her name. Surveillance had been thorough, perhaps shop cams hacked, her routines mapped via traffic feeds or a bribed neighbor. They plunged into the warehouse district, the sprawl of corrugated steel buildings looming like forgotten titans, their sodium lights cutting harsh swaths through the rain. Distant generators hummed, underscoring the splash of puddles under tires. Sujin radioed Jay. "Converge at Bay 7, extraction point." But as they approached, floodlights flickered erratically, a guard silhouette collapsing at the gate, clutching his side. No blood visible, but the slump screamed trank dart or chokehold, human error, not gunfire. Infiltration, clean and professional. Minho cursed under his breath, scanning the shadows. Park's handiwork. He knows the rotations, shift change in 5. The second tail closed in, blocking the rear, while the lead vehicle swung wide, aiming to herd them toward an open bay. Ji-un's breath came shallow. The environment turned hazardous, rain turning the asphalt treacherous, visibility nil beyond the wiper's arc. A botched escort now, false alarms morphing into real peril. She wanted to demand they drop her at the nearest public spot, reclaim her independence, but gratitude and that insistent curiosity held her silent. Sujin gunned it toward a side alley, the sedan fishtailing as it clipped a pallet stack, wood splintering with a crack. Jay's SUV roared into view from a cross street, ramming the lead pursuer off course in a crunch of fenders and shattering glass. Shouts echoed, muffled by the storm, as guards spilled from the warehouse, earpieces alive with coordinates. Minho pulled Ji-yun low as a side mirror exploded, shards tinkling like ice. "Stay down," he ordered, his body a barrier, possessiveness clashing with her urge to fight back. The chaos peaked in a standoff. Engines idling, rain drumming on roofs, the air thick with ozone and tension. The attackers peeled out, vanishing into the maze of loading lanes, but not before one hurled a canister, smoke billowing thick and acrid, a diversion to cover retreat. Coughing, Ji-yun emerged into the clearing haze, the warehouse doors grinding open under guard fire. Safe, for now, but the cost lingered. Jay nursing a grazed arm, the gate breached, manifests potentially compromised. Inside the fortified office, fluorescent buzz overhead, Minho paced, phone to ear coordinating cleanup. "The ledger's partial," he said to her once off, handing over a fresh printout, updated from the penthouse servers, showing tampered entries. "But the full ones with Park, he's holed up in a safe house off the docks, using Suar's old drops." His eyes searched hers, the pull undeniable, trust versus suspicion, a bond forged in evasion. "We end this tonight. Come with me or stay guarded here." Ji-yun hesitated, the necklace's chain a subtle weight. Autonomy screamed retreat, but the mystery's thread tugged stronger, loyalty to the truth overriding fear. "I go," she decided, voice firm. As they mobilized a small team, burners distributed, vests donned, the rain eased to mist outside. But in the ledger's margins, a new clue, a scrawled address, etched like the jade. Was it a trap, or the key to unraveling the betrayal before it claimed them both? The mist clung to the warehouse district like a shroud, turning the air into a chill veil that seeped through Ji-yun's jacket as they loaded into the armored van. The engine rumbled low, a beast stirring in the shadows of Bay 7, its blacked-out windows reflecting the erratic flicker of security floods. Minho sat across from her on the bench seat, his silhouette etched against the cargo straps and stacked crates. Supplies for the extraction, burners, encrypted tablets, and a few concealed holsters that spoke of restrained violence. Jay drove, his bandaged arm not slowing the precise weave through the service roads, while Su-jin monitored a laptop in the corner, her fingers flying over keys to ping the scrawled address from the ledger. "It's a derelict cannery off the San Pedro Pier," Su-jin said, voice cutting through the hum of tires on wet gravel. The screen glowed with a satellite overlay, rusted silos looming by the water, access points marked in red, main gate, sewer grate, rooftop vents. Park's signature. He used it for drops in the 90s, no active cams, but thermal shows 2 heat signatures inside. Could be him and a guard. Minho nodded, his eyes on Ji-yun, a silent question in the dim light. The pull between them thrummed, his protectiveness a steady anchor, yet it chafed against her independence, like a collar disguised as care. She met his gaze, the jade pendant hidden, but burning against her skin. "I need to see this through," she said, her words a bridge over the fear. Loyalty to the mystery outweighed the prudence screaming in her mind. His code, that vow against harming the blameless, had spared her thus far. But stepping into the cannery meant crossing a line, no more observer, but player in the syndicate's shadowed game. The van slowed at the pier's edge, the harbor's briny reek mingling with diesel fumes and the distant clang of buoys in the tide. Waves lapped against concrete pilings, a rhythmic underscore to the sodium lights casting long, wavering shadows on graffiti-scarred walls. They disembarked quietly, boots soft on the slick pavement, Minho briefing the team in clipped Korean. "Flank the east vent. No shots unless pinned. Extract the ledger. Neutralize Park." Ji-un followed him to the main gate, a chain-link barrier sagging under rust, its lock picked with a tool from Sujin's kit. A faint click lost in the wind's howl. Inside, the cannery sprawled like a gutted leviathan, vast halls echoing with drips from fractured skylights. The air was thick with decay, salt corrosion, mouldy wood, the faint metallic tang of old machinery frozen in time. Flashlights sliced the gloom, beams dancing over conveyor belts choked with debris and rusted vats that could hide a dozen watchers. Ji-un's heart pounded, each step amplifying the creak of floorboards, the whisper of rain through cracks overhead. Surveillance here was primitive but effective. Tripwires strung low, infrared sensors blinking faintly from corners. Tech scavenged from shipping manifests, common enough for any dockside runner. Minho's hand brushed her arm, guiding her behind a partition. "Stay close," he murmured, his breath warm against the chill. Possessiveness laced the words, a tension that both comforted and confined. She nodded, spotting a subtle tell, a discarded burner phone on a workbench, screen cracked but active, its log showing calls to a Long Beach exchange, triad ties confirming the footage's tattoo. "He's here," she whispered, pointing, "and sloppy. That phone's warm, recent use." They pressed on, the team's radios a soft static hum linking positions. Sujin signaled from the flank, faint movement in the boiler room, shadows shifting like smoke. The investigative thread tightened. Park's betrayal wasn't just greed. The ledger's address matched a partial code from the necklace, a drop point for rerouted artifacts. If he had the full etchings, he could sell routes to the highest bidder, unraveling Minho's empire thread by thread. Ji-un's ethics warred within, expose the rot, or flee to her quiet life. But the bond with Minho, forged in chases and confessions, tipped the scale toward trust, however fragile. A scuff echoed from the corridor, deliberate, baiting. Minho froze, signaling halt as two figures emerged from the gloom. Park, gaunt and wired, clutching a satchel, flanked by a hulking enforcer with the Dragon Lotus ink peeking from his cuff. "Knew you'd come sniffing," Park spat in Korean, voice echoing off the vats. His eyes flicked to Ji-un, recognition sharpening to malice. "The curator with the key. Hand it over, Han, or she sees what happens to ghosts." Minho stepped forward, hands open, embodying his code. Restraint amid the threat. "The past stays buried, Park. Su-ah wouldn't want this." But the enforcer lunged, a baton swinging in a blur, cracking against Jay's raised arm as the team converged. Chaos erupted, grunts and thuds, the clatter of metal as Sujin disarmed the brute with a precise knee strike. Ji-un dodged a wild swing, her back slamming into a crate, breath knocked out. The environment turned lethal, rain leaking through the roof formed slick pools, a loose beam groaning overhead from the scuffle. Minho tackled Park, pinning him against a rusted panel, the satchel spilling, the full ledger, pages fluttering like betrayed secrets, alongside a micro-etching tool matching the jade's marks. "You sold us out," Minho growled, fist cocked but held. "For what? Triad scraps?" Park laughed, blood trickling from his lip. "Sua's codes were mined by blood. You hoarded them, blind to the rot. The Vietnamese paid better, manifests, roots, all theirs now." Ji-un snatched the ledger, flipping to the final page. A map aligning perfectly with the necklace, revealing a hidden cache in the cannery's sublevel. Cache, documents, even Sua's last letter, yellowed and sealed. Partial discovery hit like a wave. The threat was organized. Park the linchpin in a larger fracture, rivals infiltrating via old grievances. But victory's cost loomed. Jay's arm worsening, a distant siren wailing from the pier, cops drawn by the blackout's ripple. As Minho zip-tied Park, the enforcer broke free, hurling a flare that ignited a pile of oily rags, flames leaping hungrily, smoke billowing thick and choking. "Out!" Minho barked, shoving Ji-yun toward the exit, the fire's roar drowning radios. They stumbled into the mist, the cannery's glow painting the night orange behind them. Safe, but exposed, the letter's words burned in her mind, a plea for Minho to let go, to build beyond loss. Trust deepened, yet suspicion lingered. Was Park alone, or did the dragons coil wind higher into Minho's inner circle? The van sped away, harbour lights blurring into streaks, but Ji-yun clutched the letter, its seal unbroken. What secrets did Suar guard that could shatter everything they'd just reclaimed? The van barreled through the mist-shrouded streets of San Pedro, the harbour's foghorn moaning like a wounded animal in the distance. Ji-yun's fingers trembled on the yellowed envelope, its wax seal cracked but intact. The paper edges frayed from years in hiding. The air inside the vehicle was thick with the acrid bite of smoke clinging to their clothes, mingling with the faint ozone of the sea and the low rumble of the engine. Minho sat beside her, his shoulder brushing hers in the confined space, a silent bulwark against the chaos they'd fled. Jay gripped the wheel with his good hand, eyes flicking to the mirrors, while Sujin patched wounds in the back, her kit snapping open with efficient clicks. "Head to the auxiliary safe house, off Alameda," Minho directed, voice steady as he wiped soot from his face. The words carried the weight of his code, that unyielding restraint. No innocents harmed, no loose ends that bled into the streets. But Ji-yun felt the fracture. Park's betrayal wasn't a lone wolf's greed. It echoed Suar's warnings, a rot festering in the syndicate's veins. Her autonomy chafed against the necessity of his protection. She was no damsel, yet the necklace's secrets had woven her into this tapestry, pulling her from curator's quiet to a player's peril. The safe house materialized as a nondescript bungalow tucked behind a chain-link fence in a forgotten corner of Wilmington, its facade weathered by salt air and neglect. Floodlights hummed to life as they approached, triggered by proximity sensors tied to the syndicate's encrypted network, common tech, jury-rigged from shipping GPS units. Guards materialized from the shadows, rifles slung low, their radios whispering guard rotations updated in real time. Inside, the space was Spartan, concrete floors scuffed from boot traffic, a kitchenette smelling of instant noodles and stale coffee, walls lined with monitors, flickering feeds from dock cams, and traffic cams hacked via public Wi-Fi exploits. Minho led her to a back room, a makeshift war table under a bare bulb, its glow casting stark shadows on stacks of manifests and burner phones charging in rows. He spread the ledger open, pages rustling like dry leaves, while Ji-yun broke the seal on the letter with a hesitant thumb. The ink had faded to a sepia whisper, Suar's script elegant yet hurried, as if penned in the dead of night. "Read it," Minho said, his tone laced with a vulnerability that cracked his iron facade. He poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher, the liquid splashing softly, a mundane anchor in the storm. Ji-yun unfolded the paper, her voice steady as she began aloud, "Minho, if you find this, know I never doubted your heart, only the shadows around it. The dragon coils tighter, Park's ambitions blind him to loyalty. He's feeding roots to the Vietnamese, using Mother's necklace as bait. But there's more. The child. Ours. Hidden with my aunt in Busan, safe from the wars. Protect that legacy, not the gold. Let go of vengeance. Build what we dreamed. Forgive me for leaving the codes. Use them to end the cycle." The words hung in the air, heavy as the mist outside, sirens fading into the harbour's hush. Minho's face paled, his fist clenching the table's edge, knuckles whitening. A child? The revelation struck like a breached hull. Suar's disappearance not just a raid's casualty, but a deliberate flight. Codes etched to safeguard a bloodline. "She never told me," he murmured, eyes distant, tracing old scars on his hand. The personal code he'd sworn after her loss, restraint, Protection of the blameless, now twisted with new stakes. Legacy wasn't just shipments and debts, it was flesh and blood, a secret that could rally allies or ignite fresh wars. Ji-un set the letter down, the jade pendant slipping free to catch the light, its etchings aligning perfectly with the ledger's final map. Coordinates not just for caches, but a safe passage to Busan, masked in shipping manifests. Park knew, she said, piecing it together, her curator's mind mapping the clues like artifacts in a dig. That's why he targeted the necklace, leverage for the child's location. The triad ties, they're after more than roots. An heir could claim alliances, flip the board. Human conflict surged between them, his possessiveness over this unearthed family clashing with her independence, the ethics of her world demanding she walk away from blood-soaked secrets. Yet gratitude bound her. His vow had shielded her in the cannery, turning potential gore into calculated restraint. Su-jin burst in, tablet in hand, her face etched with urgency. Intercepted message. Burn a ping from Park's phone before we took him. He's talking, even zip-tied. Coordinates match a rival meet at the Long Beach tunnels tonight. They've got eyes on us. Drone feed compromised one of our cams. The room's monitors glitched, static snowing across a harbour view, a deliberate jam via signal blockers common in dockside ops. Rising tension coiled. Surveillance closing in, the safe house no longer a fortress but a target. Rain pattering harder on the roof like impatient fingers. Minho stood, holstering a concealed piece with fluid motion, his gaze locking on Ji-un. We move the team, reroute to the penthouse, full convoy. But you... He paused, the push-pull evident, loyalty to his code warring with fear for her safety. Stay here. Guarded, this ends with the child safe, not you in the crossfire. No, Ji-yun countered, rising to meet him, the letter crumpling in her grip. The necklace started this. I finish it. Your code protects innocence. Make me one of them, or let me choose. The air crackled with their standoff, autonomy versus the bond they'd forged in fire and fog. Outside, engines revved. The convoy assembling under sodium lights on wet asphalt, distant watchers perhaps already circling. As they loaded out, a guard's radio spat a warning. Perimeter breach, false alarm or bait. The question lingered, unresolved, as tires bit into the gravel. What hidden ally did Sua's child command, and would claiming that legacy demand a sacrifice neither could afford? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The convoy snaked out from the safe house like shadows fleeing dawn, tires hissing on gravel slick with mist, the lead SUV cutting through Wilmington's fog-choked alleys. Ji-yun gripped the seat in the armored van's rear, the letter tucked into her jacket. Its words, a phantom weight pressing against her ribs. The air inside hummed with the low thrum of engines and the faint crackle of radios, guards murmuring in clipped Korean about perimeter sweeps. Minho sat opposite, his profile rigid under the dashboard glow, eyes scanning a tablet feed from the penthouse servers, real-time manifests updating with anomalies, a digital ledger of betrayals unfolding in code. False alarm on the breach, Su-jin reported from the front, her voice threading through the static. Neighbor's dog tripped the outer sensor. But we're not clear. Traffic cams show a drone shadow over the 710 interchange. Low-tech jammer, but it's buying them eyes. The harbor's salt tang seeped through vents, mingling with the metallic scent of the vests they'd donned, a reminder that protection came layered in Kevlar and caution. Ji-un felt the chafing pull. Minho's world offered shields forged in restraint, his code a vow to spare the blameless. Yet it confined her choices, turning her from curator of relics to guardian of secrets that could drown them both. Minho set the tablet aside, leaning forward, his knee brushing hers in the tight space, a contact electric with unspoken tension. The child's name was Ji-ho, he said quietly, as if voicing it aloud summoned the ghost. Su-ah mentioned a boy in whispers, but never details. If Park's feeding the Vietnamese, they're after leverage, a heir to fracture alliances, claim old debts through blood. His words carried the gravel of loss, legacy not as gold, but as a fragile thread, shaped by a past raid that had scarred him deeper than any blade. Ji-un nodded, unfolding the letter again under the van's dim light, tracing Sua's script. Coordinates embedded in the prose, latitudes for a Busan safe house masked as poetry about storms. "It's not just roots," Ji-un murmured, aligning the lines with the necklace's etchings on her phone's magnifier app. The sub-level cache in the cannery, Sua, hid more than documents. A manifest reference here, Lotus shipment, priority 1, matches a sealed container from 98, rerouted through neutral ports. If the child's alive, that's the key, proof of lineage, enough to sway factions or bury rivals. Her independence flared. This was her unraveling the puzzle, not his command. Yet gratitude tempered it. His restraint had turned the cannery's flames into a narrow escape. No innocence lost, only echoes of what might have been. The convoy merged onto the 710. The freeway a ribbon of sodium-lit asphalt curving toward the tunnels beneath the industrial sprawl. Rain resumed in sheets, drumming on the roof like impatient code, wipers slashing rhythmically. Jay's voice cut through the intercom. Tails at 11 o'clock, 3 vehicles blending with semis, plate rotations every mile, spoofed via dash cams. Rising tension coiled as the drone's shadow flickered on the overhead monitors, a black speck circling like a vulture. Surveillance pressed in, not sci-fi hacks, but crude relays from port scanners, human error in guard shifts, exploited by a turncoat's tip. Minho's hand found hers briefly, a squeeze that spoke of possessiveness laced with fear, loyalty to his code clashing against the ambition that had drawn Park into the abyss. "Stay in the van at the rendezvous," he said, eyes locking on hers. "This isn't your war." But Ji-un pulled away gently. The bond between them a taut wire. "It is now. The necklace found me, Sua's choice, not yours to gatekeep." Autonomy versus the safety he promised. Her ethics demanded truth over blind trust, yet suspicion lingered, the dragon's coil perhaps winding into his own ranks. They descended into the tunnels, a labyrinth of concrete veins under the ports, lit by flickering halogens that buzzed like trapped insects. The air grew cooler, heavy with diesel exhaust and the drip of condensation from overhead pipes, echoes amplifying the convoy's growl. Sujin's laptop pinged. An intercepted text from a burner, garbled but clear. "Lotus confirmed. Intercept at Tunnel Fork. Child's proof en route." The threat crystallized, organized, not chaos. Rivals converging on the cache's echo, using Park's confessions to strike at the heart. A jolt rocked the van, sideswipe from the shadows, metal screeching as one tail rammed the flank. Lights stuttered, plunging the tunnel into strobe-like chaos, horns blaring from the jammed lanes behind. "Breach!" Jay shouted, swerving into a service alcove, the team spilling out with disciplined fury. Minho covered Ji-un as they exited, his body a shield, the rain-slick tunnel floor treacherous underfoot. Gunfire popped, muffled, suppressed. No graphic sprays, but the sharp crack of ricochets off walls, guards returning fire in controlled bursts. Ji-un crouched behind a concrete pillar, heart slamming, the letter's envelope sodden in her fist. Amid the fray, she spotted it. A rival enforcer fumbling a tablet, its screen glowing with a photo. A young man in his 20s, sharp features echoing Minho's, standing by a Busan dock. The child, grown. Partial discovery hit, alive, hidden, now a pawn in the grudge. But the enforcer lunged toward her, baton raised, eyes wild with the promise of bounty. Minho intercepted, tackling him into the shadows. A grunt of impact followed by the thud of restraint, no killing blow, true to his vow. "Enough!" he roared over the din, zip-tying the man as the team subdued the others. Sujin dragged the tablet free, its data syncing. Messages confirming Park's rot ran deeper, a lieutenant in Minho's circle feeding the triad for a cut of the legacy. Victory's cost mounted. Jay slumped against the van, shoulder bleeding from a graze, the tunnel's exit jammed by a staged semi-wreck, horns wailing in the distance. As the convoy reformed, pushing through the blockade with a tow hook from the gear, Ji-un handed Minho the photo. "Ji-ho, he's real, but if they have his location..." Trust deepened in the shared glance, suspicion yielding to the bond they'd forged, yet the human fracture remained. Ambition versus prudence, the code tested by blood ties that demanded sacrifice. The penthouse loomed ahead, but a final radio burst crackled. Incoming from the east tunnel, reinforcements marked with the lotus. Was the true betrayer still among them? And what price would claiming Ji-ho exact from the Empire's fragile peace? The penthouse's silhouette pierced the pre-dawn haze like a sentinel, its upper floors aglow against the bruised sky, but the radio's crackle shattered the fragile calm. Incoming from the east tunnel, reinforcements marked with the lotus. 5 vehicles heavy. Sujin's voice sliced through the van's confines, her fingers pausing on the tablet as thermal pings dotted the screen. The convoy tightened formation, engines growling in unison, the tunnel's concrete walls closing in like jaws. Rain lashed the windshield in erratic bursts, the wiper's thump syncing with Ji-un's accelerating pulse, the briny harbor scent thickening with exhaust. Minho's jaw set, his hand hovering near the door latch, eyes flicking to the photo of Ji-ho on the tablet, a young man with Sua's sharp gaze, oblivious to the storm his existence had unleashed. "Not reinforcements. Ambush," he said, voice low and gravel-edged, broadcasting to the team. "Peel off to the secondary exit. Jay, take point. Sujin, jam their relays." The order rippled through the radios, a web of loyalty tested in the moment. Ji-un clutched the letter, its damp edges fraying further, the necklace's jade pressing like a talisman against her collarbone. Autonomy screamed for her to demand a drop-off, to reclaim her shadowed life of antiques and solitude, but the bond with Minho, forged in fog and fire, held her fast. His code, that vow to shield the blameless, had spared her at every turn. Now it demanded she witness its trial. The van lurched as Jay veered into the secondary fork, tires skidding on pooled water, the alcove's halogen lights stuttering overhead. Shadows detached from the gloom, lotus-tattooed figures spilling from unmarked SUVs, their movements coordinated, batons and suppressed pistols glinting under the buzz. No wild sprays, just precise advances exploiting the tunnel's choke points, barriers of overturned crates, signal jammers humming from a lead vehicle, cutting comms to fragmented bursts. Human error amplified the peril. A guard's delayed rotation brought by Park's whispers, leaving the flank exposed. "Betrayers close," Minho muttered, pulling Ji-un behind a support beam, the concrete cold and gritty against her back. The air reeked of wet stone and cordite, distant shouts echoing like accusations. One attacker broke through, lunging at Sujin with a chokehold. She countered with a knee to the gut, disarming him in a tangle of limbs that ended with zip ties biting into wrists. But the cost mounted. Jay slumped in the driver's seat, blood seeping from his earlier graze now reopened by a glancing baton strike, his grunts muffled as he radioed for medevac. Ji-un's breath caught as a familiar voice cut through the fray. "Sujin." No, a deeper timbre, laced with feigned loyalty. From the shadows emerged a Lieutenant Kim, one of Minho's inner circle, his wrist inked with the coiling dragon, ledger in hand. "It's over, Han. The boy's location's ours. Busanant confirmed via old manifests. Triads pay triple for the air." A betrayal's sting hit like the tunnel's chill. Kim, who'd guarded the penthouse feeds, had fed the rot, ambition eclipsing the code. Park was the pawn. This was the kingpin's fracture. Min-ho surged forward, tackling Kim against the wall, the impact reverberating like a drum. "You swore the vow? No innocence," he growled, pinning the man's arm, the ledger tumbling into a puddle. No fatal blow. Just restraint, true to the legacy Sua had etched into him. Ji-yoon scrambled for the book, pages sodden but legible, full codes aligning with the necklace, Ji-ho's photo annotated with a fresh intercept, a convoy en route from LAX, the boy drawn back by a forged plea from his father. The team converged, subduing the reinforcements in a blur of grapples and thuds, the tunnel filling with the acrid haze of spent suppressors. Sirens wailed faintly from above, institutional limits closing in, cops alerted by jammed cams and traffic snarls. Victory clawed free, but scarred. Jay stretched out, exposure rippling through the syndicate as manifests leaked online. Alliances fracturing under the weight of revealed debts. Min-ho zip-tied Kim, his face a mask of restrained fury, then turned to Ji-yoon, eyes softening in the halogen glow. "It's done." The threat was the coil itself, internal, organized. But Ji-ho, he's coming home. Hours later, in the penthouse's quiet hush, dawn's light filtered through rain-streaked windows, painting the harbor in muted golds. The air smelled of fresh coffee and antiseptic from Jay's hasty field patch, the storm's remnants a soft patter on the glass. Ji-yoon stood by the bar, the necklace laid on the counter beside the salvaged ledger, its jade dull now without secrets to guard. Min-ho entered with a young man in tow, Ji-ho, early 20s, wary-eyed in a rumpled jacket, the Busan flight's toll etched in his stance. No dramatic reunion, just a nod, a shared scars recognition. Sua's legacy, not in gold, but in blood, restrained. "You kept the vow," Ji-ho said quietly, glancing at the letter Min-ho handed him, voice thick with the pull of found family. Min-ho's hand rested on his shoulder, possessiveness yielding to trust, the code intact despite the cost, lost roots, exposed vulnerabilities, a lieutenant's sacrifice to the feds. Ji-chun watched, her independence intact but transformed. The adventure had stripped her illusions, revealing the true treasure not in artifacts or empires, but in loyalty's quiet forge, memories outlasting power's fleeting grasp. As Ji-ho retreated to unpack in a guest room, Min-ho turned to her, the space between them charged yet serene. "Stay, or go. Your choice now." But the pull was mutual, a pledge unspoken in the city's awakening hum. The dragon uncoiled, but the lotus bloomed enduring. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.